Hey guys, welcome to part 7 of my Making a Discord Bot in Python YouTube series. In this video, we're going to be going over Cogs. Now, Cogs are incredibly useful when creating Discord bots. They essentially allow you to sort of organize your code in a way where you can split up your commands, your events, whatever, and you can organize them into different files. You don't have to per se, but you just sort of create classes containing different events and different commands. And in this video, I'm just going to show you how to implement them in your bot. And yeah, let's get right into that. So first things first, I want to create 2 commands that will help me load and unload these cogs, or these extensions, I should say. And I'm just going to create 2 commands. I'll do that really quickly now. So first things first, we are going to say at client.command with the parentheses there. Next, for our function header, we are going to say async def load, and this is going to be my load command. And then within the parentheses here, I'm going to say ctx to represent the context and extension. So ctx is going to represent the context, as I said, and extension is going to be the cog, or sorry, the cog that I want to load. All right, so pretty straightforward so far. Now, the method that we want to use to load the extension or the cog is going to be the load extension method. And the way we use that is we say client, because this is a client method, client.load extension, and then the parentheses there at the end. Now, there is going to be something going inside these parentheses here, but before we do that, I'm just going to sort of create some more files and folders over here. So I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Cogs. All right, it's going to be in the same directory as my bot.py file. And inside this folder, as you can see right now, it is empty. But I'm going to create a new file, and I'll call it example.py. And this is going to be the folder that will hold our cog. Now we're not going to deal with that just yet. We'll come back to that. But since the cog is now in a folder called Cogs, I need to access the Python file inside that folder. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an F string here, and I'm going to say cogs dot extension. And essentially what this will do is when I run the command, giving it the extension example, because I'll have an example cog, it will go into the cogs folder and then look for the cog, right? So that's essentially what that sort of cogs dot extension part is doing there. So that is my load command, and the unload command is very similar, so similar to the point where I'm just going to copy and paste the command over here, and I'm just going to change the load extension method to unload extension. All right, everything else can stay the same. Let's just double check. Oh, right, we have to change our function header so that we have a different command. So we have load, which loads the extension, and unload, which unloads the extension. All right. Now, I'm going to show you one more thing. This isn't required, but it's probably recommended. What we want to do is sort of when our bot goes online, we want to load all of the existing cogs that we have. And to do this, we can use the OS module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say import OS. All right, let me save that. I guess I didn't have to save, but it's a habit, and it's a good habit. But down here, just before client.run, I put it here. I don't think you necessarily have to do that. Yeah, probably not. But I do it down there just to keep things clean. But I'm going to say for file name in, just want to move this out of the way, os.listdir, and dir, or dir, as I said, stands for directory, and listdir is going to list out all of the files in a given directory here. Now, the directory that I want to sort of loop through is going to be the cogs folder that I have here, right? Because I want access to the files within that folder, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say dot / and essentially that's going to say, well, the dot / represents the current directory that I'm in, and then I'm going to say cogs. So it's essentially saying, look in the directory I'm in for the cogs folder, and then give me all of the files within that directory. That's essentially what that line there is doing here. And we're going to loop through it and say that for each file, we're going to call it file name. All right? And file name is just going to be a string containing the name of each file. So in this case, it would be example.py. Now, within the loop here, we need to check to make sure that the file that we are currently on is a py file, right? So what I'm going to say is if file name ends with, this is a string method here, and then inside I'm going to pass the string .py. Put a colon there at the end. So now what's happening here is we are looping through all of the files within the Cogs directory, and we are checking if it's a py file. If it is a py file, then we're going to do something with it. And what we are going to do with it is we are going to load it. So we are going to say client.load extension. And again, we are going to create an F string here, cogs dot, no, not extension, file name. Now, this still isn't perfect. The file name has to be, or sorry, oops, this needs to be square brackets here, and this needs to go back there. We don't want to have the .py at the end of the file, because remember, the file name here is going to be example.py, and we know it ends with .py because we checked it in our if statement. So we don't want to load cogs.file.py, or sorry, we don't want to load cogs.example.py. We want to load cogs.example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use splicing, and I'm just going to cut off the last three characters there, which is essentially going to take example.py and just cut it down to example. And this will work for all .py files because they all end with 3 characters there. And since we know they're all .py, we know that we can just remove them, right? So that is essentially it. Now we have our file here, and this should load them properly. Now let's go ahead and create the cog before we test these things. So let's go in our example.py file. Now, first things first, as you may have guessed, import Discord, and from discord.ext, import commands. All right, so rather standard code, similar to what we have up here in our main file. Next, we want to create a class. So I'm going to create class example, because this is going to be my example cog, which is why I called the file example anyways. And this is going to inherit from commands.cog. All right, very important you have that there. I'm going to have the colon there at the end. Next, I'm going to create my init function. So def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. Pass in self, and we are going to pass in the client. And this is essentially going to allow us to reference the client that we have created up here within the cog. We're passing it into the cog. Next, we are going to say self.client is equal to client. And actually, I guess this will be the part that will allow us to access the client within our cog. But that's it for our initialization. You can add more there, but you don't really have to. And we also need a setup function. And this is essentially a function that will allow us to connect this cog to our bot. And the way we create that is we say def setup. And inside the parentheses here, we need to say, or we need to pass in client, or take in a client. And then inside of the function, we are going to say client dot add cog example. An example is going to be, we're going to pass in the client again. So we are running a method of client, add cog, and inside of the parentheses there of the add cog method, we are going to be passing in an instance of the example class that we have just created, right? It doesn't do anything so far, it just initializes, but we'll add some code to that. All right, so let's look back through quickly and just sort of recap what we've done so far, because I feel like I might have been going a bit fast. But let's just sort of go through step by step. So first things first, we created a load command, right? And this is going to load our extension. Pretty straightforward, and we'll use this to sort of demonstrate what it does. And you'll be able to see when I use the help command to see when we've loaded up commands and unloaded commands, etc. As you may imagine, the unload command is the opposite of the load command, but you don't know what the load command does just yet, but just understand that it's the opposite. And we've created a loop here, which essentially, when the bot turns on, it's going to go through all of the files in this Cogs folder and check if there's a if there's a py file. If there is, load it like a cog. All right. So that's essentially what it does here. And then the bot runs. And then this is the cog that we want to load. Unfortunately, it doesn't do anything just yet, but let's add some code. So first things first, actually, let's go back here. Actually, can I split this down? Let's split it to the right. Perfect. This is actually kind of nice. So if you noticed here, in a lot of my other videos, at least after the event video, actually I guess it was in my first video as well, but I've had an onReady function or an onReady event. And in this case, I don't have it here. And because I want to sort of show you how you can add events to Cogs. So the way we do this is I'm in my example.py file here. I'm going to say at commands.cog.listener, if I can spell that right. listener with the parentheses there. And this is going to be our function decorator for within a cog. So if you want to create an event within a cog, you must always have this decorator here. All right. So in the same way that we had at client.event, you must have at commands.cog.listener and then the parentheses there. All right. Next, we are going to say async def onReady. And as you may remember, the onReady function, or the onReady event, I should say, does not take anything in. And if you look through the documentation, which is linked down below, you will see that it does not take in any arguments when it is called. However, since it is inside of a cog, or a class, I should say, you must pass in self. All right, very important. Self must be the first parameter, the first argument that every function inside of your class takes. All right. So async def onReady, and then within the parentheses we have self, nothing else, and then our colon. And last but not least, I'm just going to say print. What did I have before? Bot is ready. Bot is online. Let's say bot is online. I don't even remember. And that's it for our event. Now I'm going to show you how to create a command. So similarly, sorry, I burped there. I don't know if you heard it, but at commands.command with the parentheses at the end. Very important, you don't forget the parentheses, and especially up here, we also have a capital here, so don't forget those. So at commands.command with the parentheses there. Next, I'm going to be creating a ping command. It's similar to the one I created in my earlier video where I went over, I think it was in my commands video, where we created a ping command that just said pong and said the ping or the latency, but we're not actually going to have the latency part. It's just going to say pong for demonstration purposes, don't worry. But async def ping, and then we are going to pass in self, and we are going to pass in ctx to represent the context. All right. We don't need anything else. And then inside of the command itself, I'm going to say await ctx.send pong. And that's it. That's how you create a command in a cog. So you need to have this function decorator up here for commands. Maybe I'll put a little comment here. Commands, and then events. All right, just make sure you have the setup function here, very important, and make sure you actually load the extension in your main file. So let's try running this. Let's see if we have any errors. Bot is online, so as you can see, the event is working, right? So okay, let me sort of walk you through what happened here. Let me maybe make this a bit smaller and move it down here. So first things first, the client was created, it created a load command, it created an unload command, and then it loaded an extension which it found in another folder, right? And in this extension, it happened to have an onReady function and a ping command. So it loaded that onReady function and then loaded the ping command. And then when it ran itself, once it became ready, it knew that it already had an onReady event, so it triggered it. right? It knew it was supposed to do something when it became ready, so it triggered that custom event, right? So that's essentially it. Let's head over to Discord now. As you can see, the bot is online. Now, let me show you. So if I type .help, there is the default help command. And as you can see here, it says example, and we have our ping command, right? So we know the ping command has been registered. We can even try it out. If I do .ping, it says pong. So perfect. Our cog seems to be working. Our command works, and our event works. Now, I want to demonstrate sort of what happens when I unload the function here. So again, let's look at the help command. I guess you could have just looked up here, but it doesn't really matter. We have our cog and the command associated with that cog up here. And we also see that in no category, which is sort of the default main file, we have the help command, which comes by default, and the load and unload command, which we created here, commands, which we created here. Now watch what happens if I unload example. Doesn't do anything because all it does is load or unload. I probably should have put something like ctx send extension loaded, whatever. But we don't have any errors here, so we can assume that it worked. Let's check if it did. If I do .help, the example cog, which you remember from up here, is no longer there. If I try to do .ping, it doesn't work. And I mean, I guess if I had another event, such as like, maybe if someone joined the server or if someone sent a message. But as you can see here, we did get an error saying the command ping is not found, right? Because the command doesn't exist anymore. We essentially removed the reference to what was supposed to happen when the .ping command was sent, right? So if I want to get it back, I can do .load example. Again, it won't do anything because unfortunately I did not add or think to add a message notifying us when something was loaded or unloaded. But bear with me, we're going to check to see if it works. If I do .help, as we can see, the example cog is back and the ping command is back there. And if I do .ping, it's back. All right, so it seems to be working, and we are able to now unload and load various cogs. So, and by the way, if you noticed, when I ran this command, it didn't say anything like the command ping wasn't found, because it was found. It knew now what it was supposed to do when the ping command was run, right? And I just want to sort of demonstrate maybe one more thing. I'm going to create maybe a last sort of test command. We can leave this running actually, but I'm going to create another file, new file. I'm going to call this, I don't know, test.py. And I'm going to import Discord from discord.ext, import commands. I'm going to go through this real quick. Class, we'll call this one test, and commands.cog. We are going to initialize it, self client, self.client is equal to client. All right, and I'm going to create one more command. And if you remember here, similar to how we did it here, we need to have the @commands.command with the parentheses there, and then we can create our command normally. The only difference being we need to add self. So I'm just going to create a test command. Let's say commands.command async def. Yeah, let's just call it test. We're going to pass in self. We are going to pass in context, and we are going to say await ctx.send test. I don't even need to capitalize it. This is just demonstrating something here. Def setup, we need to have our setup function. We are going to pass in client. And now inside of this, the setup function, again, if you remember, like we did here, we need to add the cog. So we are going to say client.add cog, and we are going to take the name of the class here, which is test, and pass in client. All right, so very quickly I've made a brand new cog, right? I'm going to save it. Now keep in mind, the bot has been running this entire time, okay? I'm going to head on over to the Discord here. Now, let me just sort of explain what I'm trying to do here. I've created a new cog, meaning this main file here has not rerun itself, right? So this for loop has not triggered again, meaning this test cog here has not been loaded, right? If I type .help, as you can see here, we only have example. But since I have my brand new test cog here, and it exists in the file or in the folder here, I can do .load test. Again, nothing's going to happen, but we can check for errors. Doesn't seem to have been an error here. And if I type .help, as we can see here, we have a test cog appearing with a test command. And if I do .test, the bot says test. So now I can modify I can modify the content of a cog, unload it, reload it. I guess you could make a reload command, which essentially just unloads and then reloads, and sort of like this actually. We can even do it right now. So we'll change this from unload to reload, and we'll just unload it and then load it. All right, so that's all it's doing. When I run reload and an extension name, just unloads it and then loads it. Of course, since I changed this in the main file, I would have to rerun that file since it's not a cog, but that's essentially how you would create a reload command. But yeah, you're essentially able to modify the content of a cog, unload it, and then reload it, or just load it, or use your reload command. I'm sort of confusing you at this point. Just unload the existing or the cog that you had initially, and then load the new version of it, and essentially you will just have those updates. Again, it will not work for your main bot file. In this case, in my bot.py file here, I'm not able to actively see those changes without rerunning the file or rerunning the bot. If I do .help, the reload command is not there. But as you can see here, if I turn the bot off, rerun it, and then do .help, I now have a reload command. All right, so that's essentially sort of the different things you can do with a cog. You can unload them, reload them, or load them. God, I'm confusing myself at this point. You can use them to organize your events. You can use them to organize different commands into sort of different categories of commands. You can use them for so many things, and they're so incredibly versatile, or versatile. I don't know how you say that properly. But yeah, that's Cogs. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. I know this has been a longer video than usual. I don't know how long it's been, but I'm guessing longer than 10 minutes, maybe less than 15. But yeah, if you liked it, leave a like, comment down below for videos you want to see in the future. Join my Discord. Invite link will be in the description to just, I don't know, chat or ask for help, whatever. Someone will be there to help you, if not me. And yeah, hope you guys have a good night. All right, bye.